Welcome back to Us Mint Mysteries. Today, we're diving deep into the world of Jefferson nickels, but not just any nickels. I'm talking about the ultra-rare ones hiding in plain sight, coins that could turn an ordinary pocket change find into a jaw-dropping fortune. Some of these nickels have shocked collectors at auctions, selling for tens of thousands, even pushing into the high six figures. Imagine holding just one of these treasures and realizing it could pay off your house, your car, and still leave enough for a dream vacation. So grab your magnifying glass, because tonight we uncover 8 Jefferson nickels that could be worth a small fortune. And if you love discovering the hidden secrets of US coins, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now, because you don't want to miss the next rare find that could be sitting in your own collection. Now, let's start this incredible list with a coin that many people overlook: the 1940 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary nickel from the early years of World War II, but don't be fooled. This coin hides a story that could surprise even the most experienced collector. Picture it: America in 1940. The Jefferson nickel had only been in circulation for 2 short years. First introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel, millions were struck, but over the decades, most were spent, worn down, and eventually forgotten. That's why finding a 1940 nickel in fine condition today is more special than most people realize. The design itself is classic. On the front, you'll see Thomas Jefferson's profile facing left, with "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" wrapped around. On the reverse is his famous home, Monticello, standing tall as the centerpiece. But here's where it gets interesting. Coins from 1940 can come with subtle errors and variations, especially when you look closely at the steps on Monticello. A strong strike showing full steps can take a common nickel and turn it into a powerhouse. So, what about the value? A standard 1940 Jefferson nickel in fine circulated condition might only bring you a few bucks. But when you move into higher grades, crisp, and circulated examples with sharp details, we're talking hundreds. And if you happen to stumble across one of those rare full-step examples certified by top grading companies, that's where the jaw drops. Some of these nickels have shocked bidders, climbing to prices over $45,000 at major auctions. And the rarest error varieties, doubled dies, or striking mistakes have collectors stretching deep into their wallets, pushing values up toward $150,000 and beyond. Think about that for a second. A simple nickel from 1940, something your parents or grandparents might have carried in their pocket during the early war years, could today be worth more than a brand new luxury car. That's why collectors hunt these coins with such passion. It's not just about the history, it's about the thrill of discovering a hidden fortune in what looks like an everyday nickel. So the next time you come across a 1940 Jefferson nickel, don't brush it off. Hold it up to the light, study the details, and you just might be looking at a piece of history worth tens of thousands of dollars. And remember, this is only the first coin on our list. The values are only going to get more shocking from here. Now, let's turn our attention to a coin that almost everyone overlooks: the 1969 Jefferson nickel. To most people, this looks like the definition of an ordinary nickel. It's the kind of coin you've probably seen rolling around in an old change jar, tucked away in a dresser drawer, or even still popping up in circulation today. But here's the shocking truth. This little 5-cent piece from 1969 can hold secrets worth an absolute fortune. Think about the time period. It's 1969. America had just witnessed the moon landing, the Vietnam War was raging, and culture was shifting in ways the world had never seen before. While all of that was happening, the U.S. Mint was striking millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels. In fact, over 120 million were minted that year between Philadelphia and Denver. With numbers like that, you'd expect them to be completely common, right? But here's where the story takes a surprising twist. Because of the high-speed production and the mint's push to meet demand, quality control wasn't always perfect. That means coins slipped through with errors, doubled dies, weak strikes, and unusual variations. These are the kinds of mistakes that most people never notice, but to a sharp-eyed collector, they can transform a simple nickel into a life-changing payday. In fine circulated condition, A 1969 nickel doesn't sound exciting. It might only fetch $1 or $2 from a collector who just wants to fill a hole in their album. But that's only scratching the surface. When you start looking at higher grade examples, especially those with full steps visible on Monticello, the game changes. Those details are rare to find because the dies were down quickly in the late 60s. A crisp uncirculated piece with full steps can command thousands of dollars, sometimes pushing past $5,000 to $10,000 depending on quality. But here's where it gets truly shocking. Some 1969 nickels have been discovered with dramatic doubling on Jefferson's profile or on the lettering. These doubled die errors are the crown jewels of the series, and when they hit the auction block, collectors go absolutely wild. One such error has been reported to bring over $200,000, and in pristine condition, some experts say they could push into the $250,000 range. Imagine that a coin you could easily overlook in your pocket change suddenly turning into a ticket to early retirement. And let's not forget, condition is everything. A coin like this in fine condition might not dazzle at first glance, but it can still serve as a doorway to discovery. Fine coins show history, the wear, the scratches, the little nicks that remind us this nickel traveled through decades of American life. From the gas stations of the 70s to the candy stores of the 80s, all the way to the coin jars of today, a fine condition nickel has seen it all. But if you happen to find one with the right details, sharp steps, strong strike, or even a hidden error, then that simple worn nickel could be worth more than most people's cars. So, what makes the 1969 Jefferson nickel valuable? It's the perfect storm of history, rarity, condition, and those once-in-a-lifetime errors. And here's the best part: these nickels are still out there. They haven't all been scooped up. Some are hiding in collections that have sat untouched for decades. Others are sitting in change jars right now, waiting for someone with a sharp eye to spot the difference. So the next time you come across a 1969 Jefferson nickel, don't dismiss it. Hold it under the light. Look carefully at Jefferson's eye, his chin, the words, "Liberty," and "In God We Trust." Flip it over and examine the steps of Monticello. If you see those sharp details or that doubling, you might just be staring at a six-figure treasure. And that, my friends, is why a simple coin from 1969 could be worth far more than anyone would ever believe. Now, let's move to one of the most famous dates in the entire Jefferson nickel series, the 1964 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, this might seem like the most ordinary nickel you could ever find. In fact, 1964 nickels are everywhere. They were minted in staggering numbers, and chances are, you've held one in your hands at some point. But here's the catch. While most people pass them off as pocket change, some of these coins, even in worn condition, could be worth shocking amounts of money. Let's step back for a moment. The year was 1964. America was in the middle of a coin shortage, and demand for small change was skyrocketing. To meet that demand, the U.S. Mint went into overdrive. They struck over 2.8 billion nickels that year, the highest mintage of any Jefferson nickel up to that time. That means the 1964 nickel is the most common date of the series. But what makes it fascinating is that hidden among those billions are rare varieties. Sharp strikes and error, coins that can make collectors' jaws drop. In worn condition, a regular 1964 Jefferson nickel isn't going to grab headlines. It might be worth just a few cents above face value, 50 cents to $1 to a collector who wants to fill an album slot. But here's where things get exciting. Some worn nickels carry details or errors that make them incredibly valuable. Even a worn example with the dramatic double die can fetch thousands. The design is classic: Jefferson's left-facing portrait on the obverse, and Monticello standing proudly on the reverse. But pay close attention to the reverse. The steps of Monticello are one of the most important details for collectors. Most 1964 nickels, especially in worn condition, have steps that are flat, faded, or completely gone. But if you can find one that still shows a trace of those steps, it instantly stands out from the billions of others. And if by some miracle you find a higher grade coin with full steps, you're talking serious money. Auction records prove it. while ordinary circulated nickels from 1964 might only be pocket change. Certified high-grade examples with sharp steps have sold for $15,000 to $20,000, and when you factor in rare varieties like double dies or repunched mint marks, the numbers soar. Some of the rarest error coins have shocked collectors by climbing past $75,000, and yes, a few have even crossed into the six-figure range. That's right, a nickel from 1964, the most common date of them all, has the power to reach prices most people would never believe. Now imagine this. You're holding a 1964 nickel in worn condition. It's scratched. The edges are smooth. The shine is long gone. To most people, it looks like junk. But what if that same coin carried a mint error that only a trained eye could spot? Maybe a doubled word on the obverse. Maybe an off-center strike. Or a repunched mint mark that survived decades of circulation. That coin, even worn, could be a hidden treasure worth thousands. So, what makes the 1964 Jefferson nickel valuable? It's the combination of history, the massive mintage numbers, the subtle varieties, and the thrill of hunting through what seems common to find the extraordinary. It's a perfect example of why coin collecting captures the imagination, because something ordinary can, under the right circumstances, become something extraordinary. So here's the tip. If you come across a 1964 nickel, don't toss it back into circulation. Check the steps on Monticello. Look for doubling in the lettering. Study the mint mark carefully, because one small difference could turn a worn old nickel into a story you'll be telling for the rest of your life. And who knows? That worn little coin might just end up paying for a vacation, car, or even a house. Now, let's move ahead to the 1980s. A time of change in America, and with it, another Jefferson nickel that most people completely overlook. I'm talking about the 1981 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, it seems like one of the most ordinary pieces of pocket change you could possibly find. Millions of them were minted, and in fine condition. You might think it's worth no more than 5 cents. But here's the shocking twist. Some of these 1981 nickels, even ones that look worn from everyday use, have proven to be worth jaw-dropping amounts of money. Let's set the stage. By 1981, the Jefferson nickel had already been in circulation for more than 4 decades. It was a coin most Americans took for granted. People used them for parking meters, vending machines, and toll booths without a second thought. The mint in Philadelphia struck over 657 million nickels that year, and Denver added another 364 million, with more than 1 billion produced in total. It doesn't sound like rarity is even possible, but collectors know the truth. Sometimes, the most common dates hide the most valuable secrets. The design remained the same, Jefferson's profile on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse. But when you look closely, you start to see the key details. In fine condition, the coin shows wear on Jefferson's cheek, jawline, and hair, while Monticello's steps on the reverse are usually worn smooth. To the untrained eye, this makes the coin seem ordinary. Yet collectors hunt for the rare full step strikes, those nickels where every step of Monticello is sharply visible. And here's the shocker, while almost impossible to find from this year, when one surfaces in top uncirculated grades with full steps, values have soared to $15,000, $25,000, even over $40,000 at auction. But that's not all. The 1981 Jefferson nickel is notorious for errors. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and doubled dies have all been reported. These errors can turn a 5-cent coin into a collector's prize worth thousands. Some dramatic errors, especially full off-center strikes where part of the design is missing, have stunned collectors by selling for $10,000 to $20,000. Even when the coin shows some wear. Now imagine this. You're sorting through change or digging through an old jar of coins, and you come across a 1981 nickel in fine condition. At first, you shrug. It's just an old coin from the Reagan era, nothing special. But then you look closer. You notice doubling in the word liberty, or perhaps a mint mark that looks repunched. Suddenly, your ordinary nickel transforms into a piece worth thousands. That's the kind of discovery that keeps collectors searching, day after day, coin after coin. And here's where the story gets even more exciting. Some 1981 nickels in mint state condition with sharp strikes and perfect luster have pushed into shocking price territory. Imagine a single coin, still shining like the day it was struck, fetching over $50,000 in the right auction. That's the kind of payday most people can't even imagine from a nickel. So, what makes the 1981 Jefferson nickel valuable? It's the combination of condition, rarity of full steps, and the wild variety of mint errors hiding in plain sight. Most examples in fine condition might only be worth a small premium, but don't forget every rare six-figure coin starts as just another nickel in someone's hand. That's the thrill of the hunt. So here's the lesson. Never ignore the 1981 nickel. Take the time to look closely. Study Jefferson's face, inspect the words, and especially check the steps of Monticello. You just might uncover a treasure that the average person would spend without a second thought. And remember, the further we go down this list, the rarer and more valuable these Jefferson nickels are going to get. Now, let's travel back to one of the most fascinating years in American coinage, 1942. On the surface, a 1942 Jefferson nickel in fine condition may look ordinary. But the truth is, this date holds secrets that can shock even seasoned collectors. What makes this year so incredible is the dramatic shift that took place in U.S. coin production during World War II, turning what seems like just another nickel into a potential treasure worth thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Picture the year 1942. America had just entered World War II after Pearl Harbor, and the nation's resources were being redirected to support the war effort. Nickel, key metal for armor plating and weapons, was desperately needed. That meant the U.S. Mint had to change the way nickels were made. Early in the year, Jefferson nickels were struck with the regular composition 75% copper and 25% nickel. But later that year, the Mint introduced the famous war nickels, a special alloy of 56% copper, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. These coins were easy to spot because they carried a large mint mark over Monticello, a dramatic design change collectors love today. So right away, you can see why the 1942 nickel is special. It exists in two types: the regular composition, early strikes, and the silverware nickels struck later. And here's the kicker: both types can be worth a fortune under the right circumstances. In fine circulated condition, a regular 1942 nickel might only bring in a few dollars. A silver 1942 war nickel in the same condition might be worth a little more, since silver always adds extra value. But when you step up into uncirculated grades, the numbers get exciting. A sharp, high-grade 1942 nickel with full steps on Monticello can fetch $5,000 to $10,000 easily. And when you move into certified gems with rare doubling errors, the prices climb into shocking territory. Some 1942 double die varieties are legendary. One famous example shows strong doubling on the words Monticello and 5 cents on the reverse. Another shows dramatic doubling on Jefferson's eye and profile. These varieties have stunned collectors at auction, with certain pieces bringing $60,000, $100,000, and even over $150,000 depending on grade. And remember, some of these coins started their lives as ordinary nickels, spent in grocery stores, gas stations, and movie theaters before being discovered decades later. Now think about this. You're holding a 1942 nickel in fine condition. It's worn, it's dull, it's traveled through the pockets of countless Americans. Maybe it even sat in a soldier's change during World War II. To most people, it's just an old 5-cent piece. But what if that coin carries a hidden double die? Or what if it's one of the rarer silver war nickels, with a bold mint mark over Monticello? Suddenly, your ordinary coin transforms into a jaw-dropping six-figure prize. That's the kind of discovery that turns collectors into treasure hunters. So, what makes the 1942 Jefferson nickel valuable? It's the history, the transition from regular alloy to wartime silver, the dramatic design change with the big mint mark, and the thrilling double die errors that send prices skyrocketing. It's a perfect storm of circumstances that makes this year unlike any other in the series. So here's the takeaway. If you come across a 1942 Jefferson nickel, even in fine condition, don't let it slip away. Hold it up to the light. Check for that oversized mint mark above Monticello. Look for doubling in the lettering, because one small detail could mean the difference between 5 cents and a fortune big enough to shock anyone who ever doubted the power of pocket change. And remember, this is only one coin in our journey. The deeper we go, the more unbelievable the values become. Now, let's move forward to 1947, a year when America was rebuilding after the Second World War, and the Jefferson nickel was already becoming a familiar face in the nation's pocket change. At first glance, a 1947 Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition might seem like just another common mid-century coin. After all, more than 95 million were struck that year at the Philadelphia Mint, plus millions more in Denver and San Francisco. But here's the surprising twist: within the sea of coins lies a world of hidden treasure. And some of these nickels have been known to command prices so high, they'll leave you speechless. The design in 1947 still carried all the features introduced in 1938. On the obverse, Jefferson faces left, with his strong profile surrounded by "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." The reverse shows Monticello, his Virginia home, framed by "E pluribus unum" of and United States of America below. In extra fine condition, the coin still carries most of its original detail. Jefferson's hairlines are visible, the lettering is sharp, and Monticello still shows a good outline, though the steps are often a bit worn. Even with that wear, an extra fine 1947 nickel is far more attractive and desirable than a heavily circulated one. But the real story here isn't just about condition, it's about what lies beneath the surface. The 1947 nickel is famous for some incredible minting errors and die varieties that make certain examples extraordinarily rare. For instance, collectors have documented double dies where the lettering on Monticello and 5 cents shows dramatic doubling. These coins are instantly worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars, and in higher grades they can rocket into the tens of thousands. And then there are the full-step nickels. Most 1947 coins were weakly struck, especially on Monticello's steps, which quickly wore away. But on the rare occasion you find a 1947 nickel with fully defined steps, you've struck gold. A standard extra fine coin might bring you $5 to $15, but an uncirculated full-step example has stunned collectors at auction, climbing past $20,000, $30,000. And even into the $50,000 range. That's the kind of money most people never associate with something as ordinary as a nickel. And we can't forget the dramatic errors. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or even coins struck on the wrong metal planchet have been reported for this year. These bizarre mistakes instantly catch a collector's eye, and the prices can soar. Some of the rarest have shocked auction houses, realizing $75,000 to $100,000 for a single coin. Imagine that: a nickel from 1947, something that once bought a Coke, turning into a small fortune. Think about what this means. You're holding a 1947 nickel in extra fine condition. To most people, it looks old, maybe interesting, but nothing spectacular. But when you study it closely, when you check for doubling, examine the steps, or inspect for an unusual strike, you could be holding a treasure hiding in plain sight. And that's what makes this coin so thrilling. It carries history, it carries scarcity, and it carries the possibility of unbelievable value. So, what makes the 1947 Jefferson nickel valuable? It's the blend of condition, design sharpness, mint varieties, and those once-in-a-lifetime error coins that transform an everyday piece into a prize. Even in extra fine condition, it can be the doorway to something far greater if you look closely enough. So here's the tip: never brush off a 1947 nickel, especially one in extra fine condition. Put it under the magnifying glass. Study Monticello's steps. Look at the lettering for signs of doubling. Because hidden in those details could be a nickel worth a jaw-dropping six-figure payday. Now, we come to 1948, a fascinating year in the Jefferson nickel series. To most people, a 1948 nickel in extra fine condition doesn't look like much. It's a coin that has survived 75 years of circulation, carrying with it the stories of post-war America. But here's where things get exciting. What looks like an everyday nickel can sometimes hide value that climbs into the tens of thousands, even pushing six figures in rare cases. The year 1948 was a turning point. The war was over, the US economy was booming, and Americans were eager to move into a new era of prosperity. The mint struck over 89 million nickels at Philadelphia, with millions more at Denver and San Francisco. With numbers like that, you might assume these coins are common. And yes, most examples are. But collectors know there's a world of difference between an ordinary 1948 nickel and one with sharp details, full steps, or rare mint errors. The design was still the same familiar one by Felix Schlag. On the obverse, Jefferson's left-facing portrait dominates, with "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" circling the edge. On the reverse stands Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home. In extra fine condition, the coin still shows clear detail. Jefferson's cheekbones and hairlines are visible, and Monticello's structure is bold, though the steps are usually soft or partially worn. That's what makes the rare full-step coins so extraordinary. Most 1948 nickels, even extra fine ones, might only fetch $1 or $2. But when you get into higher grades with crisp luster, prices climb into the hundreds. And those elusive full-step examples, they've blown collectors away, bringing in $10,000, $20,000, and even past $30,000 at major auctions. That's right, a simple nickel from 1948 can outshine gold and silver coins in terms of value, all because of strike quality. And then there are the rare errors. Some 1948 nickels show double dies, where the words Monticello or 5 cents have clear doubling visible to the naked eye. Others have repunched mint marks, a quirk from when mint marks were hand-punched into the dies. And once in a while, a wild striking error appears off-center coins, clipped planchets, or even coins struck on the wrong metal. These are the ones that can send values through the roof. Sometimes $50,000 to $100,000 or more, depending on condition and rarity. Now imagine holding a 1948 nickel in extra fine condition. The shine is mostly gone, but the design is still sharp. To most people, it's just old pocket change. But what if that very coin had a double die? What if it showed a repunched mint mark? Or imagine the unbelievable luck of finding one struck on the wrong planchet. Suddenly, your 5-cent piece transforms into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery worth more than a luxury car. So, what makes the 1948 Jefferson nickel valuable? It's the combination of condition, strike quality, full steps, and those dramatic mint errors that collectors chase with passion. Even an extra fine coin can be the gateway to something much bigger if the details line up. So the next time you come across a 1948 nickel, don't brush it aside. Hold it under a magnifying glass, check Monticello's steps, study the lettering for doubling, and look carefully at that mint mark. Because one small detail could turn what looks like an ordinary nickel into a treasure worth tens of thousands of dollars. And as we move forward in this list, the discoveries get even more unbelievable. Now, let's move on to 1970. And this one is really intriguing. At first glance, a 1970s Jefferson nickel in fine condition may not seem like much. It's a coin that has been in circulation for decades, showing the usual where Jefferson's cheek and jawline are a bit soft, Monticello's steps are faint, and the luster is mostly gone. But here's the detail that makes this coin unforgettable: the unusual red shade. Nickel coins are normally a dull silver color, so when one carries a coppery or reddish tone, collectors immediately perk up. That odd color often comes from a striking error, a planchet problem, or sometimes exposure to heat or chemicals. But when the red shade is natural and not artificial, it can mean something far more valuable than pocket change. The San Francisco Mint struck over 238 million nickels in 1970. That seems like a massive number, right? But tucked away in that mintage are coins with unusual features, and some of them have sold for staggering amounts. What makes 1970S so special is the variety of errors and the demand for high-grade proofs and circulation strikes. Collectors especially hunt for coins with sharp, full steps on Monticello, or those with unusual toning that stands out from the rest. And a red-shaded example? That's the kind of eye appeal that can set off bidding wars. In fine condition, an ordinary 1970S nickel might be worth 10 or 20 cents. But if that reddish hue is from a true planchet error, say the coin was struck on a copper-based planchet, or it's a transitional strike, we're talking about an entirely different category of rarity. Some such coins have sold for $15,000 to $25,000, even in circulated grades, and in higher mint state conditions, with full steps and that same unusual red tint. Values have skyrocketed into the six-figure range, well over 100,000, and then there are the doubled dies and off-center strikes. A few 1970S nickels show doubling on the obverse, especially in the words, "Liberty," or the motto, "In God We Trust." Others show repunched mint marks, where the S was struck more than once into the die. And of course, the holy grail is the off-metal strike. Imagine a 1970S nickel struck on a cent planchet, creating a reddish copper-toned nickel by accident. Those are legendary finds, bringing in $200,000 to $350,000 when they appear at auction. That reddish hue you see could actually be the sign of one of these incredible mint errors. Picture this. You're holding a worn 1970S nickel. It's got the usual nicks and wear, but something about it looks off. It glows with that reddish copper tone. To most people, it's just an old coin with discoloration. But in the hands of a collector, it could be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery worth more than a house. That's the kind of shock factor that keeps people searching their change every single day. So, what makes the 1970S Jefferson nickel valuable? It's the mint mark, the condition, the possibility of full steps, and especially those rare minting errors and planchet oddities that create unique coins like this one with a natural red shade. Even in fine condition, it demands attention, because a small detail could make it worth thousands, or even hundreds of thousands. So never overlook a 1970S nickel, especially one that looks different. The unusual color, the subtle errors, or the sharpness of Monticello's steps could turn what looks like pocket change into a jackpot coin. And as we move into the next coin on our list, the surprises only get more unbelievable.